Hello again, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce George and Jeremy, and you guys had me on, Coast to Coast, which is such a famous show that I grew up with. You had me on there. That was, I think, one of the first times we did one of these talks, and on Weaponized, and I wanted to return the favor. The thing is, your background, your history, it's such an amazing thing, and I want to get into that. But the reason why I thought this panel would be interesting is, a lot of what we were talking about with AI earlier in the day is focusing on the tech and all these things, but there is this strange implication that for the first time as a society where we are dealing with non-human intelligence, right? We are experiencing what it's like to have somebody on the other side that we know is a human that's talking to us, that's remembering what we're saying. They can reason. We have no idea where that goes, but what we have today is already pretty wild. And for those that don't know, Jeremy and George have been, George, in your case, I think going back to the 80s, you've been reporting on UAPs, UFOs. And you guys are believers in this, and that's, it's something that as your stories progressed, what we're just showing was Jeremy brings up to Congress and bring whistleblowers in there. I just think that the agenda that I wanted to cover is aliens and having non-human intelligence even crazier than AI? Like, I actually think about this all the time because we are, as a society, a lot of the reason why the government wouldn't put out UFOs or information like that was we're not ready for the truth. And yet the truth of our current time is that we have ChatGPT on our phones that is quite smart and deeper in our lives than any sort of other presence might be. And it's something that it's just a fascinating thing to talk about philosophically, but also just the story of what you guys are doing is fascinating to me, and I'd love to share that. So with that, I'd love to hear from both of you on what's been going on with the recent stuff you've been doing with your documentary and also with Congress and everything along those lines.
I would just say, to start with, when I started down this road, the dominant paradigm then was that UFOs represent some technology from other planets, that we're being visited by beings from other worlds, other solar systems. And my views on that and the views of the topic in general have changed so much. When you say AI and aliens as two different things, I'm not quite sure that's true anymore. I think they might be the same thing. I know back then when I started, that dominant paradigm was aliens from other worlds. Well, the more you learn, you realize that doesn't really fit all the encounters that people have had all over the world throughout human history. I know what got me hooked on that topic was not so much I'm not smart enough to figure out where they're from or why they're here, although I have some guesses about it, but I was pissed off at the government for lying to me. You look into the documents that were written, reports, memos, confidential assessments that passed around the Pentagon, CIA, other agencies within the federal government, within the national security state, that existed before FOIA was the law of the land, before the Freedom of Information Act existed, and they were very candid with each other. This is from somewhere else. It's not us. It's not Russians. It certainly wasn't the Chinese back in the 40s and 50s. Yeah. It's from somewhere else, and they knew it. And at the same time, they were telling the public something else entirely. And they initiated a suggested policy of debunking. That became the official policy of our government, to debunk it, to make fun of it, to strip it of its aura of mystery. So at the same time, they're telling the public one thing, they're admitting something else behind the scenes, and that's what got me hooked. I was pissed off about it. Now, the views of people like Jacques Vallée, who's a computer scientist, who's very, very instrumental in the development of AI, by the way, in investments, and he convinced me and millions of other people around the world that this is probably interdimensional, that if you can manipulate space-time in the way that these craft have shown us in thousands and thousands of examples all over the world, you could be ET and interdimensional, you could be time travelers, you could be from some other kind of reality, parallel reality that we do not even understand. You could be all the above. If the craft do what we've seen them do, you could be all that stuff. Now we're at the point where the conversations that you and I had with Jeremy 10 years ago, you convinced me that I needed to look at this in a different way, that in essence, we are already becoming sort of joining with technology. The possibility that AI becomes, we've created an alien intelligence in essence, and we've unleashed it, and we don't exactly know where it's going. There's a lot of thought in the UFO world that maybe that's what these UFOs are, that they are an alien intelligence, an AI intelligence that moves from planet to planet in a variety of really interesting ways.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's changed the narrative during the time that I've known you guys is, I mean, you know, the common consciousness around this stuff changed with the New York Times article, right? That was showing the tic tac, and especially when you see, you know, videos or things of evidence of fighter pilots, of, you know, I mean, the kinds of stories that back when I was growing up, like none of these things were taken seriously. They also some farmers saw it. It's not that anymore, right? I mean, that's the thing. These whistleblowers, people like, you know, that have actually worked, you know, in the government and in the military, seeing these things, recording videos, we have video evidence, and having that go on the front of the New York Times is really interesting to me. And that part of your guys' journey, when that kicked in, has been fascinating. I mean, and even just how we ended up with you guys, you know, the session of Congress putting stuff into evidence is just really interesting, because that changes the narrative for me as well. I mean, even just people, you know, sort of scoffing at the subject. And for me, I'm open-minded. I don't know what even the nature of reality is an open question, right? But I do think that the fact that there is real, that UAPs are real, I mean, where they come from, what they do is the question. And, you know, it can't be a foreign government doing this 20 years ago. I'm just curious, just even the process of provenance, right, with taking this all the way to Congress and what that journey has been like. I'd love to hear about that more.
Well, it's been a long, lonely slog, I'll tell you, because for journalists, you know, you get beat up and humiliated and insulted pretty much every step of the way. And for so long, that's what it was like for a journalist to do a story about UFOs. You know, I had done all kinds of reports in Las Vegas, the mob and political corruption, all kinds of big stories. But when I started covering UFOs, I become crazy. You know, my journalism colleagues thought I'd gone around the bend. So it's been a long, tough slog, but slowly, surely, we've made some progress. Jeremy and I have really, I think, helped push the ball down the field, and it's an entirely different environment now. I mean, Congress went more than 50 years without any hearings on this because of stories that we've done, whistleblowers who've come forward, videos and other documents that have leaked out and that we've made public. It suddenly became, if not fashionable, at least acceptable for Congress to hold hearings, for committees to be created, for witnesses to be invited into SCIFs to give classified testimony, and the whole environment has changed. But still, the resistance, the pushback from the keepers of the secrets, whoever they may be, some of them might be here, has been pretty astounding.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty convinced that Jules and my friend Rod are fucking aliens, okay? That's my bias.
By the way, we've known each other since we were all been, like, you were 10, Rod and I were 12, so we go back a long,
I looked up to the older kids. We did jujitsu together, and that was a great time in our lives. And I never thought I would be working with the great George Knapp on journalism, on all this. I never thought I would be doing this UFO thing. But it's not a matter of belief for me anymore. You mentioned the word belief. UFOs are real. They are machines of unknown origin. They outpace, outmaneuver, and outperform anything we have in our military arsenal. That is fact, whether or not you believe that. That is fact. That is true. And that is from all of our experience working with military intelligence, whistleblowers, Congress, senators. We know that to be true. Now, that provides a problem. The problem is that we're not being told the truth. I don't know what the full truth is, but I know you're not being told the fundamental truth. So that's what put fire in my belly to go after this. And it's fun as hell. It's just really fun. Get to roll with this guy around the world and hunt UFOs. I mean, come on. But one thing that we did to move the ball forward is obtain and release military filmed footage of confirmed UAP, they call them now. It's a cool term to destigmatize it rather than UFO. I think that's a smart term. There's a lot of stigma. Really bright people have really stupid thoughts about what we're seeing in the skies. It just is what it is. It's hard to say there might be something out there that's beyond human intelligence. And there is. There seems to be. Even if it's artificial, there seems to be. So you mentioned the Tic Tac UFO.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know, in 2004, Commander David Fravor chased a UFO for the United States military. He called it a Tic Tac because his buddy didn't think a flying Tylenol was very cool sounding. They called it a Tic Tac. Dropped from 80,000 feet to sea level. No sonic boom. Was docking. In my words, docking was something under the water. Now, we just released 1 week ago another Tic Tac shaped UAP with asymmetric propulsion. No signs in thermal of normal propulsion. You tell me how that thing is outpacing our military craft without any signatures of propulsion. This is a mystery, but it's right in front of your eyes. And so I want to know. I don't want to believe. I want to know what's going on. That's why we did raise the alert. We did bring people to Congress. We brought whistleblowers in and footage, and we got a lot more coming. So pay attention, because I think you're going to see better evidence you've ever seen before in your life of UFOs or whatever they're called. And are they artificial? Is it a sentient, synthetic intelligence? Well, that is the current thought of people working on this, that it is a artificial, synthetic consciousness. And maybe we have to redefine what consciousness is. I don't know. That's your guys' field, being experts in AI, not mine. But I don't even know what that means. Yeah. But you're gonna hear soon a lot about how our government has been using AI to siphon off the best evidence so you never see it, because that's a report we're gonna do.
Okay. I mean, what's interesting to me, and this is the science of just even, I think Star Trek is really about the, the science of space machine. I mean, the chances of sending biological beings out there, and the thing is, the reason why this conversation after all these years is so interesting is that we just have the technology. We know that we're 3 steps away from we send a probe to Mars, it'll have an AI that can do so much more than we could do remotely. And I think that if you're going to explore the galaxy or do things, you probably send out, an AI, machine intelligence, and we have that now. We're sort of close ourselves to confirm that, and I just find that probably is the likeliest way even we might explore the galaxy and the universe in the long term. But I do think that the idea of seeing this stuff play out in this more public way, and I mean, Ari, by the way, I connected you with him on this stuff. I mean, his mother-in-law is like obsessed with UFOs and all these things. And I think that there must be layers of this where it's like private organizations might be involved in this, not necessarily the government, because I mean, now you effectively have just a massively different government even now than you did before. And it's just interesting that if any of the technology that we're seeing in these craft that have been filmed could be turned into something more than just, 'cause it seems like if it's being reverse engineered, it's not really being reverse engineered well. Like, we don't have anything like that. It's just a fascinating topic as well. And where do you see your journey playing out? I mean, you're talking about things in the next few months. Like, what's a year looking like? I mean, are there more congressional hearings that are being scheduled? What was, the experience of the last ones? And these whistleblowers, like David Grush, that worked, that were working only a year before it, for the government. Like, are there more of those? Like, what's next in this crazy story? or if you,
Well, let me put it this way. AI and the UFO topic, there's good news, bad news. So the good news part of it is, for example, there was a secret program in Las Vegas that was created that the public never heard about it when it was on. Harry Reid, the Senate Majority Leader, secured $22 million. A contract was put out through the Defense Intelligence Agency. Bigelow Aerospace got the contract. Well, it just so happens Reid and Bigelow were guys that I knew, and suddenly in my backyard of Las Vegas, it became the UFO research capital of the world. And what their plan was to create the world's largest UFO database. Data warehouse is what it became, 260,000 cases. It was called Capella. It was created and designed by Jacques Vallée, and his plan was to put AI on top of that to look for data points that correlate and help us understand this stuff. When the people in the Pentagon found out that this program existed, existed in a very tightly controlled stovepipe, they pulled the funding. And so the AI component was never put on top of this. But if it had been, we might have a much better understanding of the phenomena itself. That's sort of the promising part of it. And of course, as we've been reading, if you pay attention to this stuff, AI is now going to be used to scan the heavens and look for signs of life in ways that human eyes it would take us hundreds of years to do. I guess the bad side of it would be using it to, again, hide evidence, fool the public, take the best stuff out of classified servers and stash it away somewhere, which is what we've been working on, a story about it.
Yeah, there's 2 things about it, like why the secrecy, right? It's not because civilization is going to collapse. Everybody has this idea there might be something more out there than us. It's really because of weaponization, to the best of my ability to understand at this point. Any technology that we're observing that can do this can also immediately be weaponized, and they know that. So this is a race for the technology. Why haven't we made progress? My understanding is the material science itself, the craft themselves, the way they're made, they're constructed. That's the issue that we have been kind of isolated from being able to really crack a lot of it. But they want derivative and exploitive derivative technologies. That's what everybody that works on them tells us, is that that's what they're trying to do, is get derivative technologies if we can't make a whole thing. So if this is true, and if there are reverse engineering programs, which I am convinced of now, I mean, I know that's true. And so the question becomes, how far do we get, and what do we do with those derivative technologies? Because they can be weaponized. It is theorized that these craft, it is observed that these craft have no inertial effect, which means one thing as far as we know, which is that they're gravitically propelled, as crazy as that sounds. Maybe not to you guys, but to the rest of the world, maybe it's a little crazy, but that's how they seem to operate. And there seems to be a sentience with the craft themselves. I can't get around that anymore. That is what's always conveyed to me and George when we talk with people with close proximity to UAP, military people. They always try to describe that feeling, and they don't have words. Engineers don't have words for it. A sentience to the craft themselves.
The crashes are real. There's no question about it. Now, maybe they're gifts, maybe they're made to look like crashes, but it's like taking a cell phone and throwing it in the chimpanzee cage, knock yourself out. That they allow us to have this stuff. I wouldn't give it to us. The reverse engineering programs are real. That was the first UFO story I did years ago about Area 51 that kind of put it on the map.
Yeah.
Those things, those programs are real. We now know enough about that, and people that have worked in them and witnesses that we have interviewed that haven't been made public yet, those things are real. We haven't figured it out yet. We haven't mastered the technology. I think we've made progress on some things, but one reason that we are told that we haven't made progress is because these biological entities, David Grush testified under oath to Congress that there are biological entities that we've recovered with the crashes, seem to be part of the control mechanism for these amazing machines, that it works with them, not with us.
Yeah.
As crazy as that is.
Well, what is interesting, though, is you have Schumer, who was the head of the Senate, and others like Rubio, I think, was really pushing to open more stuff about this stuff.
And then they stopped.
Yeah, what happened? And then you had Obama talking, well, there are things out there and all this stuff. I mean, it's wild, and to sort of see that level of sort of discussion, and then you're saying they stopped, but why? Like, what would you think the impetus for that might be?
I think it's inherent, the links between these programs and national security. There's a race for this technology. We're trying to figure it out.
And it's not just globally, right?
Yeah, we're trying to get it. The Russians are trying to get it. The Chinese are trying to get it. And I think the Israelis and maybe some other countries as well. But we're all in a race for it. And whoever gets that technology and figures it out, they win. You only need one of these things, and you win. Whatever it is you want to win. It gives you control over the militaries of any country in the world. And so I think that's one reason the keepers of the secrets don't share this stuff with us, because you can't tell your friends without telling your enemies. That's what we've heard over and over again from national security people. But, they could share with us some of the basics. And I don't think people would freak out. Maybe 70 years ago.
Not anymore.
Yeah, not anymore. I think we're ready for it, although we don't exactly know what it is.
And then you're admitting to a lie. So if you're admitting to the fact that this is real and it's been there a long time, and
we're living in a post-truth society now, where no, I'm saying it's just, you're right. I mean, I think that it is, but it's interesting because the parallels that you're talking about, what the effects might be, and I mean, if you have AI that is better than the competition, it's the same sort of thing. I mean, that's why I think there's such a competition even against China. Like, well, the GPUs, NVIDIA's GPUs can't be sent to China at a certain level, because that means they'll get to, more intelligent AI that can drive their military, faster and quicker. And a lot of this stuff is really interesting, because it parallels this idea that there is competition around sort of technology and reverse engineering, whatever this is. But from what I understand from what you guys have shared, and the narrative of this has been going forever, like more than just 80 years, like forever, basically. And so we've had all the time, I mean, to do this, and it just, we seem to be still stuck, potentially where we were at the, in 1948 or whatever, but it's been also, this thing's been going forever, right? If it's what we think it is, I mean, then,
It's been with human beings since the beginning that humanity started looking up at the stars, is what the evidence points to. Obviously, it's harder. You can look at the last 150 years and know for sure what was in the air and what shouldn't be in the air. But look, it's not just about things in the air. If this is all correct, there is some intelligence engaging humanity for a reason that is opaque to us. And I'd love to find out just a little bit about that.
Curiosity, right? I mean, that's something that drives all of us. Yeah.
People who say to us every day, they want to know and they can't wait for disclosure, I don't think that day is ever going to come. I think there's a lot of unknowns in how the world would react. And yeah, we are ready for the idea that aliens from another world could be visiting us, but I don't think they're from other worlds. I think they lived here. I think they've always lived here. And We don't know exactly what the agenda is. Maybe it's more than one agenda, more than one group of people who are competing here for resources or whatever. Maybe we're an agricultural product. Maybe they're harvesting souls. We really don't know what their agenda is or what the timeline is. So maybe there is some deep, dark secret that would scare the hell out of us if they released it. But I'm not entirely convinced there's anybody that knows for sure, not humans anyway.
Yeah. And we talked, when I was on your show, this was something relevant because at that point, I think we're deep in VR, talking about the simulation theory and all of that. And, but from the perspective of just even, science, going back to the fact that, if there's any likely explanation for these things, especially because, for those who don't know, Jean Pilet, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Spielberg's movie was, they had a character that was based on him, right? When Spielberg was researching, and by the way, Spielberg's next film is another UFO disclosure movie. So it's, it's in the mindset. The thing that I found interesting looking into Fowler's story is that he's like, this thing is so strange, it can't be literal. It can't be the literal thing that we're experiencing. It's something deeper, some sort of almost, and to me, maybe that means that it is, if you're going to send a probe out to explore things and, it just gets stale or the egg goes, like LLMs today go crazy or do weird things. That could explain some of what we're seeing. Assuming that, the evidence is what we think it is, but it does feel like, the stuff with AI is such an interesting, counter-narrative to these pieces. And also, I think that, the interesting thing about provenance and truth and, all these things, it just feels like the world is so much more, things just get out unfiltered in a much deeper way, and I just wonder sort of how that's going to affect all of this, in the coming years, because it's been a tumultuous few years, even just in seeing how information itself gets, created and authenticated and shared, and what people's reactions to that are.
Well, if it turns out that AI is a non-human intelligence, I think that's fair to say. It probably is. We've created the alien intelligence.
Yeah, and we have that in our pockets to some degree today. And I also, your deep experience as a journalist before all of this began. It's like, how do you look at journalism today and the whole media? It's changed so much. But what's your take on it, having been doing this for decades?
Well, I can tell you that after you have pursued Area 51 and been chased out of there dozens of times, looking for aliens around the world and going to Russia and digging up files and hanging with Jeremy and talking to these deep insiders who are scared that they're going to be bumped off. It's hard to go back to covering the city council meetings.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, we've got a few minutes left. What do you guys want to share just about anything that you're doing in the coming months, and anything selling into this story? Because I know there's always, every time I check in, there's always something new and something really interesting. And
the AI part of it.
We just released another piece of visual evidence for the public. This is the 2023 USS Jackson Tic Tac UAP. We brought the whistleblower out at noon today. Sorry, the witness out at noon today. So that's, people can see his testimony. And I just say next week, you will have a whistleblower coming forward that relates to the documents that George and I were able to bring to Congress at the last hearing called Immaculate Constellation. And it is directly related to AI and what our government is doing to not only scrub data, but isolate it in order to better study the UAP phenomenon, which they damn well know is going on.
Someone using AI to scour classified servers and scoop up evidence and information, visual information, and keep it from even other government agencies as well as the public.
To grab it before it gets into other classification archives of visual evidence. I think we're going to see some footage in the future from me and George that we've obtained and are making sure it's safe to release that is shocking. It's different than a lot of what you've seen before, the shapes.
Yeah, your experience, obviously, this year, right? We have new administration. Has it changed anything for you guys in what you're seeing and how this process has played out for you?
They're threatening journalists now. There was a comment. They use Twitter for everything. There was a comment. They're not just going after whistleblowers. They'll be going after journalists, and I take real umbrage with that. We're living in a free society. First Amendment. I believe that we should do our job as journalists, and we're going to do our job and test that system.
Yeah.
You're clapping, I'm terrified. You're clapping, I'm terrified.
It's true. You get threatened. Our phones have been tapped. Damn good and well they didn't get a warrant for those taps. But followed around. People do threaten us, and some of it very scurrilous kind of threats. It was encouraging that members of Congress have been so outspoken and have had these hearings and have promised to pursue witnesses. But at the same time, we've seen pushback from intelligence operatives. This last hearing that Jeremy was at, he had presented a document these guys did everything they could to muddy the waters, and they admonished members of Congress. If you watch that hearing, you saw a couple of these members of Congress were admitted, we were just told we can't ask certain questions about this and that, and then they distorted the source of the information that was shared to them about this program that we're discussing now. If somebody has that kind of power to push around members of Congress to intimidate them, they certainly can work us over too, you know.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for joining me for this fascinating discussion, and I'll come on your guys' show next. I mean, this was great. Thank you so much.
Well, how about next week?
Yeah, I've RenderCon done. I've got more time. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.